Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Easy English Spark, your home for boosting English listening and speaking skills. In this new series, we'll explore 10 engaging chapters, from A Gentle Awakening to Promises Under the Stars, each packed with natural phrases, clear pronunciation tips, and real-life dialogues. So grab your notebook, make yourself comfortable, and let's ignite your English journey together. Chapter 1: A Gentle Awakening. I open my eyes just before dawn, the room still wrapped in a bluish hush. The first sliver of sunrise creeps through the curtains and spills across the sheets, turning the cotton a pale gold. For a brief second, I lie perfectly still, listening to my own breathing, noticing how soft the mattress feels under my shoulders and how cool the morning air brushes my cheek. There is no alarm, no shrill ringtone demanding I rise, only the slow, patient call of daylight nudging me awake. I resist the reflex to reach for my phone. Instead, I reach for a tall glass already waiting on the bedside table, a blueberry banana, smoothie I blended last night and tucked into the fridge for this very moment. Tiny beads of condensation gather on the glass, cold against my fingertips. I take the first sip, thick and sweet, and taste the faint tang of yogurt beneath the burst of berries. The flavor feels like permission to begin today gently on my own terms. Sliding out of bed, I pad barefoot across the hardwood floor. Each board creaks softly, a familiar but rarely acknowledged sound. At the window, I pause, draw back the curtain, and the garden below comes into view. Dew glistens on rose leaves. Sparrows flit between boxwood hedges, hopping, chirping, fussing over crumbs only they can see. A breeze stirs the hanging wind chime. Its hollow notes drift upward and melt into the morning. I breathe in slowly, savoring air that still carries the damp freshness of dawn. In most seasons of my life, this is when I would unlock my phone, scroll through overnight emails, and feel the gears of the day grind into motion before my feet even touch the ground. Not today. Today, I let the phone lie face down, silent and irrelevant. I walk to the kitchen, the hem of my robe brushing the floor. The kettle sits like a silver sentinel on the stove. I fill it, watching the water swirl, and set it to heat. While it hums, I lean against the counter and notice tiny things. The faint pattern of steam on yesterday's coffee mug, a lone crumb of toast at the edge of the breadboard, the thin ray of sun inching across the tile as though drawing an invisible line from window to wall. Each detail feels newly discovered as if the world has been repainted overnight just for me to admire. When the kettle whistles, I pour steaming water over a sachet of chamomile and mint, releasing a gentle perfume that drifts upward in lazy spirals. I cup the mug with both hands, letting the warmth seep into my palms, and wander back toward the bedroom window. Outside, a neighbor's bicycle bell rings, a crisp, metallic ping that echoes off brick facades. Somewhere down the block, a dog barks twice, then falls silent, content that its announcement has been heard. I draw in a long breath, sensing my lungs expand fully for the first time in weeks. On the exhale, I let go of the knot of obligations I normally carry, the unanswered messages, the unopened documents, the unending list of tasks. They drift away like mist above a river at dawn. I tell myself I will not chase them today. Today is for noticing, feeling, and simply being. With tea in hand, I settle into the armchair by the window. The fabric welcomes me, soft and broken in. I pull a knitted throw over my legs, although the room is not cold. The texture is comforting. I sip slowly, tasting the delicate blend of herbs, and watch as the sky shifts from lavender to peach, then to a pale, washed-out blue. Light spreads across rooftops, climbs chimney stacks, slips into alleyways, and eventually lands on my face. Warm, forgiving, hopeful. The sparrows in the garden rise in a sudden flutter, as if responding to an invisible conductor. Their wings catch the sunlight, flashing silver as they wheel into the open air. I smile at the sight, realizing I cannot remember the last time I watched birds for longer than a passing second. Each flutter seems to underline a single idea. Life pulses beautifully when given room to unfold. Minutes stretch, unmeasured and free. Without thinking, I close my eyes, inhaling the mingled scents of chamomile, fresh-cut grass, and early morning earth. I feel the gentle thump of my heart, steady and unrushed. In that small golden silence, I whisper a promise to myself. On this day, I will move slowly. I will taste, breathe, listen, linger. I will let the light in and let the noise out. When I open my eyes again, the sun is higher and the world has fully awakened, yet I remain wrapped in an unhurried calm. I lift the last sip of tea to my lips, set the empty cup aside, and rise. A new day waits beyond the threshold of my front door, but I will greet it at my own pace, step by mindful step, carrying with me the quiet wonder of this gentle awakening. Chapter 2. Embracing unplanned time. I step outside without a map, a schedule, or even a loose intention. The street greets me in its usual bustle, but today I am untouched by its urgency. Instead of turning left toward the tram stop, the direction I have marched for years, I drift right, down an alley I have never bothered to notice. A faint scent of jasmine seeps from a cracked clay pot beside a weather-worn door. I pause, breathe it in, and let my feet decide the next move. Patches of sunlight dapple the pavement where old brick buildings lean like congenial neighbors. A pigeon hops across a puddle left by last night's rain, head bobbing as if nodding me onward. I follow a mosaic of mismatched cobblestones until the alley widens into a tiny square I never knew existed. At its center stands a sycamore, its branches spreading like open arms. Beneath the canopy, a street violinist plays a slow waltz that drifts into the morning air. I linger at the edge of the square, letting the music wash over me. The notes feel like an invitation not merely to listen, but to be still. The song ends. Coins clink into the open case. I find a silver coin in my pocket and drop it in. For a moment our eyes meet, the musician's and mine. No words are spoken, yet something grateful passes between us. My gratitude for the melody, his for the acknowledgement. I wander on, carried by the hush that follows a beautiful tune. A turn to the left reveals the river promenade. I do not remember the last time I walked its length in daylight. The water moves lazily, mirroring fluffy clouds that glide above. I lean on the railing and watch ripples weave across the surface, occasionally skewed by the wake of a passing rowboat. A heron stands, knee-deep near the far bank, statue-like except for the slightest tilt of its head. I time my breaths to the slow pulse of the water, inhale with the draw of the current, exhale as it releases downstream. A gust of wind lifts the scent of fresh bread from somewhere close. My stomach growls in polite suggestion, so I follow the aroma into a bakery whose door is propped open with a wedge of driftwood. Inside, the air is warm and sweet, thick with cinnamon and yeast. Rows of pastries crowd wooden trays, plum danishes, cardamom knots, butter-glossed croissants. A baker with flour-dusted arms smiles as though she has been expecting me. Without haste, I study each option, eventually choosing a pecan twist the color of deep amber. She passes it across the counter, still warm enough to melt the drizzle of honey on top. I step outside, tear away the first flaky layer, and let the syrup cling to my fingers. A bench nearby offers a seat beneath a ginkgo, whose fan-shaped leaves flutter like tiny golden flags. I eat slowly, noticing every pop of caramelized nut, every sigh of pastry layers collapsing. Nothing else exists until the final crumb is gone. Once, my hands are licked clean. I rise and follow a narrow lane flanked by art supply shops. Through a smeared window, I spot jars of pigments, ultramarine, ochre, alizarin, stacked like treasure. The bell above the door tinkles as I enter. Shelves, grown under sketchbooks, charcoal tins, water-steady brushes. I haven't sketched since university, yet something in me sparks. I buy a small pad and a graphite pencil, no plan for what I might draw. The shopkeeper wraps them in brown paper and ties it with twine, as if securing a secret. Outside, church. Bells toll 11. I stroll toward a park, packages under one arm, jacket flapping loose behind me. Children chase each other over damp grass, their laughter a bright chord against the hum of the city. I find an empty bench overlooking a cluster of daffodils, unwrap my new sketchbook, and let the pencil wander. Lines appear, the silhouette of the sycamore, the curve of the river, a half-remembered violin bow. My hand moves without thought, propelled by curiosity alone. When I pause to brush graphite dust from the page, I realize an hour has floated by unnoticed. The sky grows whiter, hinting at midday. A string of food stalls lines the far edge of the park, their colorful awnings fluttering. I meander over, lured by sizzling sounds. Steam rises from a pan of garlic-fried vegetables. The vendor, an elderly man with laugh lines etched deep, hands me a sample on a toothpick. The flavor bursts bright and earthy. I order a full portion served in a compostable bowl and eat it standing, chopsticks clicking softly. Around me, strangers exchange jokes and recipes as if we are all longtime friends invited to a spontaneous feast. With hunger satisfied, I wander deeper into the city. My steps take me past antique shops, kiosks selling postcards, and a tiny florist where bouquets spill onto the sidewalk. I choose a single marigold, its petals the shade of late summer sunsets, and tuck it behind my ear. The florist, delighted, refuses payment. A gift for anyone who wears the day so openly, she says. I thank her and walk on, the blossoms, faint spice a constant reminder of kindness. As afternoon tilts toward evening, clouds knit across the sky. A soft rain begins, not a downpour, but a trembling mist. Instead of rushing for cover, I slow to feel droplets cool against my cheeks. Asphalt darkens beneath me, puddles purl into tiny mirrors. In their reflections, street lamps bloom halos of light the city's heartbeat made visible. At a bookstore cafe, I duck inside to dry off. The walls are stacked to the ceiling with dog-eared novels. I pick one at random, an old travelogue about a botanist crossing South America, and carry it to a corner table with a pot of ginger tea. Steam fogs my glasses. The room hushes to the soft turning of pages. I read of wild orchids and river dolphins while rain drums the roof in steady percussion. Time dissolves. Chapter merges into chapter until the light outside fades to indigo. When I finally mark my page and look up, the cafe owner is placing salt lamps on each table, amber glow replacing daylight. She smiles, asks if I'd like more tea. I nod, surprised by how naturally this unhurried rhythm feels. The second pot arrives. I pour, sip, close my eyes, and let gratitude settle like warm stones inside my chest. Night has fully fallen when I step back onto the street, air scrubbed clean by rain. Traffic dwindles, neon signs flicker to life one by one. I trace my path home beneath a canopy of umbrellas, but I do not hurry. Every glistening cobblestone, every reflection, every distant echo of laughter feels like an offering. I accept each gift, open-ended, unscheduled, unplanned, and carry them with me, weightless but lasting. The front door clicks shut behind me at last. Shoes off, jacket hung, I set the marigold in a glass jar by the window. Its orange brightness radiates in the lamplight, a small sun I can keep. The sketchbook rests beside it, pencil tucked neatly across the cover. I touch them both, tangible evidence of a day that had no agenda yet delivered more than any planned itinerary could. Before sleep, I jot a single line in my journal. Wandering led me back to wonder. With that, I close the book, turn out the light, and slip beneath the covers, already eager for whatever unwritten adventure tomorrow may quietly invite. Chapter 3: Along the Riverside Path. I leave the apartment just after mid-morning, backpack light on my shoulders and no particular mission tugging at my sleeves. The sky is a fresh laundered blue, streaked with high-feathered clouds that promise another easy day. A few blocks away, the boulevard drops toward the river, and I follow the gentle slope as if gravity itself is pointing the way. When the water first appears between rows of plane trees, it glimmers like hammered silver. Closer, I can see lazy swirls on the surface, tiny whirlpools where the current folds back on itself before drifting on toward the sea. The promenade here is paved with broad, honey-colored stones, still warming under the sun. Cyclists glide, passed with soft clicks of chains. Runners pad by in rhythmic breath. But I join the slower tribe of wanderers, hands loose in my pockets, eyes free to roam. A faint briny note mingles with the scent of wet clay and river weeds. I pause at a wrought iron railing, lean forward, and breathe in until the inside of my nose tingles. Down at the embankment, a solitary fisherman casts a long arc of line that flashes in the light like a falling strand of silk. Each time his lure kisses the water, concentric rings ripple outward, briefly disturbing a pair of mallards that paddle just beyond the drop-off. A chalkboard sign outside a tiny kiosk advertises freshly squeezed clementine juice. The letters are smudged where morning mist must have reached them, and I imagine the vendor rewriting the words each dawn, a daily renewal. I purchase a cup. The juice is tangy bright, as if the sun itself has been poured over ice. I carry it with both hands while walking southward, sipping slowly, feeling vitamin warmth ignite behind my sternum. Soon I reach an arched footbridge painted sage green. Instead of crossing, I descend a narrow flight of stairs that leads to the lower towpath. Here, the world grows quieter. Stone meets water with only an occasional lap, and broadleaf branches droop overhead, filtering the light into shifting mosaics. A short distance ahead, an elderly man stands at an easel set precariously close to the edge. He wears a flat cap, speckled with white gesso. On his canvas, a rough impression of the opposite bank already glows. Ochre warehouses, a glinting crane, the faint outline of a cargo barge. I stop a respectful few steps away, watching the measured strokes of his brush. He glances sideways and smiles without breaking rhythm. The river never poses the same twice, he murmurs, voice like creased paper. I ask how long he's been coming here. 32 summers, he replies. Every season, every tide. I still get it wrong, and that's how I know it's alive. We share a moment of companionable silence, his brush tapping, my heart listening to water and wind converse, before I thank him and continue on. The path curves and widens into a small pier that juts into slow-moving current. A handful of benches line the planks, and I choose the one furthest out, where the river gurgles audibly beneath the gaps. From my perch, I watch a low tugboat nudge a chain of empty barges upstream. Its engine chugs steady as a metronome, leaving a broad V-shaped wake that rocks the pier in gentle pulses. I set my pack beside me, close my eyes, and let that rhythm seep into my breath. In, out, in, out. Each exhale feels as if it carries a grain of old tension away. When I open my eyes again, 2 children are kneeling at the water's edge, folding colored paper into boats. Their mother hands them markers, and they draw quick windows, crooked anchors, smiling faces. One boat is turquoise, another marigold orange. They place their fleet on the current with reverent ceremony, cheering as the origami sails spin toward distant bridges. The mother notices me watching, smiles, and offers a sheet of sky blue paper. I crouch beside them, remembering half-forgotten creases from childhood. My clumsy craft lists to port but stays afloat, bobbing after the others until all disappear around the bend. Further along, a food truck painted like a giant tomato is parked beneath plane tree shade. Its awning flaps lazily, aromas of basil, garlic, and rising dough drift toward the water. I order a slice of rosemary potato focaccia, crisp at the edges, pillow soft within. I carry it to a stone ledge, break off bites, and share seasoned crumbs with an eager flock of black-headed gulls. Their wings flash white against the midday sun, catching thermals in tight spirals before settling again for more. Mid-afternoon light softens, tinting everything with amber. I reach a section where wild reeds fringe the riverbank, and a sign invites passers-by to help with a volunteer cleanup. A small group in neon vests offers me gloves and a biodegradable sack. For the next half hour, I join them, plucking bottle caps, candy wrappers, and a surprising number of plastic spoons from the grass. Each piece of litter lifted feels like a minor prayer answered. For the heron, for the mallards, for the unseen, fish swirling beneath. In the reeds, I find an old cobalt glass medicine bottle, its surface bubbled by age. Instead of tossing it, I rinse it in the river. The sunlight refracts through blue curves, and I tuck it safely into my pack as a keepsake. Farther south stands the old boathouse, its timber beams dark with decades of tidewater. From its porch, I rent a single scull for an hour, something I have never dared before. A lanky attendant steadies the craft while I settle onto the sliding seat. The oars dip. Water grips them with cool insistence. I push, glide, pull, glide. Awkward. At first, then smoother. Midstream, the city hush recedes, replaced by creaks of oarlocks and the muted slap of blades. I drift beneath the cathedral tall plane trees, staring upward through a lattice of leaves where pockets of sky blink like scattered lanterns. Returning the boat, arms pleasantly fatigued, I feel taller somehow, as if unhurried water has lengthened my spine. Dusk comes slowly, laying mauve shadows across the opposite quay. Street lamps flick on in sequence, tiny gold beads stitched along the seam of river and sky. I stroll back toward the bridge where I began, but now every landmark feels transformed. The fisherman has gone, leaving ripples of memory. The violinist from yesterday's square now plays beneath an alcove, notes mingling with evening swallows. I climb the green arch of the footbridge and pause at its crest. The city skyline to the west burns copper in the sinking sun. To the east, the first stars puncture a gradient of indigo. Boats are moored, their signal lights winking red and green like patient fireflies. From this vantage, the river reveals its secret. It is less a body of water than a slow-rolling chronicle of everything that touches it. Laughter, breadcrumbs, cigarette ash, moonlight, dreams. I whisper a quiet thanks, cross the bridge, and take the uphill street home. With every step, the day's images reorder themselves like photographs drying in a dark room. The painter's brush, the children's boats, gulls in sunlight, oars slicing jade water, neon vests gleaming in reeds. Back. In my apartment, I set the cobalt bottle on the windowsill. Under lamplight, it shines like a captured droplet of dusk. Before turning in, I write a sentence in my journal. The river taught me to follow the flow and still leave the banks cleaner than I found them. I close the book, listen to distant tugboat horns echo down the channel, and drift to sleep with the rhythm of water rocking my thoughts. Chapter 4. The Sunlit Café. I find the cafe by accident, the way a shell finds the shoreline, carried by a quiet current of curiosity. A wedge of sunlight slices across the pavement, illuminating a narrow doorway painted mustard yellow. Above the lintel, a hand-lettered sign reads, Lumen Roastery. The word lumen sounds like a promise of brightness, and the scent swirling through the open door, half citrus, half toasted almond, pulls me inside before I can wonder where the next street might have led. Bell chime, wooden floorboards, hush. The room is long and high-ceilinged, with tall sash windows along one wall. Light pours through them in broad, angled sheets, dazzling as water on white sand. Dust motes drift inside the beams, performing a slow ballet that only the patient can see. The opposite wall is exposed brick, hung with mismatched mirrors that catch the sun and scatter it across tabletops like coins. The barista looks up from tamping espresso. Wisps of copper hair escape her headscarf. A tiny tattoo, a stylized swallow, peeks from beneath her sleeve when she waves. Her greeting needs no words. I feel oddly welcomed, as though the door frame itself has recognized me. To the left, a granite counter displays pastries under glass domes. In one dome, creme-filled cannelés stand at attention like caramel soldiers. In another, pistachio rose cruffins preen under a snowfall of powdered sugar. Beyond them, a tray glows with slices of orange polenta cake whose crust glitters with coarse demerara. The air is warm with butter, cardamom, and freshly ground beans, a trifecta that convinces even the most disciplined soul to stay. I step forward, scanning a chalkboard menu written in looping chalk script: Mandarin cortado, black sesame mocha, rooibos vanilla fog. My eyes settle on a drink called Solstice Latte, espresso, steamed oat milk, honeycomb drizzle, and a dash of turmeric for color. I request one, plus a square of the orange polenta cake that has been quietly lobbying for my attention. The barista nods, scribbles on a cup, and says my name as if it were a lyric she's eager to return to in the refrain. While she works the espresso machine, its hiss and thump like the breathing of some friendly mechanical animal, I scan the seating. No uniform tables here. Each piece looks rescued from a different decade. A low teak bench sits by a record player spinning Nina Simone on low volume. Near the back, a schoolhouse desk waits beneath a hanging fern whose tendrils sway in the lazy draft of a ceiling fan. But it is the window ledge that beckons me most. A long plank of reclaimed oak fitted with 3 stools, drenched in the full generosity of midday sun. I claim the middle stool, slip off my backpack, and rest elbows on the smooth wood. Outside, the street is a river of motion. Cyclists whizzing past, dogs tugging leashes, a courier balancing 2 impossibly tall boxes. But the glass pane feels like a hush button pressed between that rush and this stillness. The barista approaches, balancing my order on a small wooden tray. Solstice latte for Jordan, plus a slice of sunshine, she announces. The latte arrives in a ceramic mug the color of wet sand, its foam marbled with saffron spirals. The cake sits on a matte slate plate, a wedge of pale gold freckled with darker crumbs. I take a sip. Espresso's deep bass, oat milk's warm alto, honeycomb's sweet high note, all threaded with turmeric's quiet earthiness. It tastes like morning in late June when the sky wakes before you do. A forkful of cake follows, crisp crust giving way to tender crumb, bright with citrus zest and a whisper of olive oil. The pairing is unhurried conversation in flavor form, each element listening to the other before speaking. Across from me, Sunlight pools on the pages of a half-finished crossword someone left behind. A stub of pencil rests atop it, as though the puzzle is waiting for the world to catch its breath and finish line 15 across. I turn it toward me, fill in a few simple clues, then set it back exactly as it was. My quiet contribution to a citizen. Science of leisure. At the far end of the counter, a man with silver-rimmed glasses and a tweed coat asks the barista for a Chemex single origin, notes of plum. She grins, starts grinding. The smell of fresh grinds rolls across the room in an invisible wave that makes every conversation pause for half a heartbeat, acknowledging the aroma like a favorite song's opening chord. I watch her pour spirals of hot water over the bloom, releasing a soft hiss, coffee grounds foaming like wet cedar mulch after rain. Each spiral is ceremonial, deliberate, an argument for craft over haste. A soft scrape behind me. An older woman settles into the desk beneath the fern, unpacking. A fountain pen and a stack of pale blue envelopes. She tests the nib, then begins writing letters in looping script. Occasionally she stops, gazes out the window and smiles at something only she can see. I imagine she's composing travel updates to grandchildren, or perhaps memoir sketches, to be folded into future chapters of her life. The record flips to the B-side with a crackle. Nina's voice deepens, lights flicker inside the vinyl's grooves. The cafe vibrates like a single giant sigh. Patrons inhaling aroma, exhaling tension. Outside, a delivery cyclist brakes too sharply and apples spill from a crate. Inside, two strangers catch each other's eye and exchange the soft, inevitable laugh of synced empathy. My drink now half gone, I pull the sketchbook I bought yesterday from my bag. Graphite pencil in hand, I sketch the window frame, the cake, crumb, the barista's scarf whipping as she turns, a swirl of steam twisting like ribbon above a newly poured cup. The drawing is loose, clumsy in parts, but alive. An hour slips past in hush and graphite dust. The barista eventually notices, leans over my shoulder, and smiles at the rough portrait I've drawn of her serving coffee. "Is that me?" she asks, cheeks flushing the color of rose tea. I nod. She beams, then tucks a stamped loyalty card beside my plate. Every box punched, free drink unlocked. "Artists drink on the house," she says, and I am too surprised, too warmed to argue. Outside, the light shifts from white to amber, sliding across the wooden sill in elongated rectangles. The cafe begins to fill. A pair of university students debating philosophy over chai. A florist with hands stained green unpacking weekend bouquets. a saxophonist polishing mouthpieces between sips of cold brew. Yet the hush remains, as though every newcomer is handed an invisible agreement to keep the day gentle. Another slice of cake would be indulgent, so I order a bowl of Greek yogurt with fig compote instead. The figs taste like dusk in the Mediterranean, sun-thickened sweetness grounded by faintly bitter seeds. Between spoonfuls, I jot notes in my journal. Light pours like music. People arrive tuned to its key. I underline the sentence twice, unsure why it feels urgent, but trusting the instinct. Mid-afternoon, a sudden sun shower slants against the windows. Golden droplets streak the glass like quicksilver. Inside, not a single voice rises. We all watch, collectively mesmerized until the clouds pass and the sky clears to a brighter blue than before. The barista rings a brass handbell and announces, "Rain followed rainbow discount." Anyone who orders filter coffee in the next 5 minutes receives a splash of house-made lavender syrup, free. She might as well be distributing bouquets. The line forms willingly, laughter trailing like perfume. I decide to linger, ordering a Moroccan mint tea just to savor the show. The tea arrives in a glass tumbler, emerald leaves swirling beneath the surface. Each sip is garden cool, leaf sweet, reviving. I press the tumbler against my wrist, cooling pulse points, then cradle it in both palms, grounding myself in its warmth. Through the window, I spot the fisherman from this morning, now walking riverward with folded chair under one arm. He pauses, catches my gaze, and tips his cap, recognition bridging two separate silences. Another thread woven into the day's bright tapestry. Late light slants long across stone and wood. I close my sketchbook, slide coins across the counter, even though my loyalty card promised a free cup. The barista shakes her head, tries to push them back, but I insist. "Payment for the atmosphere," I say. She laughs, pockets the coins, and hands me a tiny envelope of seeds. "Calendula for spontaneous gardens," she explains. Gift meets gift, the ledger balanced in gratitude rather than numbers. I step outside into air that smells of rain-cooled brick and newly ground coffee still wafting through the doorway. Behind me, the café glows like a lantern, windows catching the slanting sun and sending it back as liquid gold. My pulse is steady, my heart unhurried, my mind layered with flavors, sounds, sketches, rich as panettone. Halfway down the block I pause, glance back. Through the glass, the barista is wiping down the counter, humming off-key, haloed in yellow light. A new customer stands at the register, reading the menu as though deciphering sacred text. I smile, turn the corner, and carry the cafe's warmth out into the widening world. One more subtle radiance folded into the map of days. Chapter 5. Kitchen Experiment. I unlock the apartment door in the soft glow of early evening, pockets still fragrant with the barista's calendula seeds. The hallway feels hushed, almost expectant, as if the rooms themselves have heard I intend to cook tonight and are holding their breath. I shrug off my jacket, slip into cotton slippers, and head straight for the kitchen. An L-shaped nook of white tile and battered oak cabinets that has witnessed more reheated leftovers than culinary adventure. This evening, that changes. On the train ride home, I resolve to invent a dish, something I have never attempted, guided only by instinct and whatever ingredients wait in cupboards and crisper drawers. A small culinary dare to prove that spontaneity can simmer as richly indoors as it does on a riverside path. First, reconnaissance. I pull open the refrigerator and survey its quiet interior. A half moon of feta wrapped in wax paper, a cluster of cherry tomatoes still clinging to their vine, 2 leeks leaning like conspirators in the vegetable bin, a carton of free-range eggs stamped with yesterday's date. In the door, a lonely jar of preserved lemons glints yellow gold behind a regiment of condiments. In the pantry, I find a paper sack of pearled farro, forgotten since a winter soup experiment, and a tin of smoked paprika I bought simply because the color thrilled me. A half-empty bottle of dry white wine stands shyly beside a jar of local honey. The raw materials suggest Mediterranean themes: sun, herb, tang, and earth. So I decide on an herbed farro risotto, studded with blistered tomatoes, leek ribbons, and crumbles of lemon-kissed feta. A one-pan poem to long sunsets. I set a wide enamel skillet on the stove, the red exterior chipped in 2 places that look like continents on an antique map. While it warms, I line up ingredients as if arranging a still life. Tomatoes unwashed so their skins keep morning field dust. Leeks trimmed to pale green stalks, 2 cloves of garlic, a handful of flat-leaf parsley left from yesterday's sandwich garnish, and the star I almost overlooked, the preserved lemon. Its rinds gleam translucent, stored sunshine suspended in brine. An underused chef's knife waits on the cutting board. I halve the tomatoes, letting seeds spill like tiny amber beads. Each cut releases a grassy sweetness that mingles with the peppery scent of the stalks I slice into thin crescents. The garlic I smash beneath the flat blade. Thwack, a small thunderclap. Then mince into sparkling confetti. Knife rhythm becomes heartbeat. The scratch of blade on board is percussion steadying my thoughts. Olive oil shimmers in the skillet. I drop in the tomatoes cut side down and they sizzle, releasing a hiss like soft applause. Within minutes their skins wrinkle, char freckles appearing where juice meets metal. I nudge them with a wooden spoon, coaxing caramel to bloom without rushing it. Patience is flavor. When the tomatoes have slumped into jammy halves, I slide them to the pan's rim and tip in the leeks with a pinch of sea salt. They soften almost instantly, strands turning silky, scenting the air with hints of onion and spring rain. Garlic follows. A quick 30 seconds so it kisses heat but avoids bitterness. Then the farro, poured in a sandy cascade. Each grain glints briefly before oil coats it, toasting to a faint nuttiness. I pour a generous splash of white wine, and the pan erupts in fragrant steam. Alcohol sizzles off, leaving orchard green notes that swirl up to fog my glasses. I grin, half blind, alchemist, and lower the flame. Unlike traditional risotto, farro doesn't demand ladle after ladle of stock, but I still choose the gradual method for the pleasure of watching absorption happen. I warm vegetable broth in a small pot and add it a cup at a time, letting grains swell at their own slow pace. Between additions, I rinse the preserved lemon under cool water, scraping away inner pulp until only the translucent rind remains. Finely diced, it becomes a pile of amber shards, salty, citrusy sparks waiting for the right moment. Nearby, feta crumbles under gentle pressure, snow white against cutting board grain. Parsley leaves gather in a fragrant mound, their stems stacked like discarded punctuation. 20 minutes pass in this way. Pour, stir, listen, breathe. The rhythm feels monastic, each movement a quiet chant. Outside the window, the horizon bruises lavender. Inside, golden bulbs flicker to life above the stovetop, spotlighting steam like stage fog. As the farro nears tenderness, chewy at the core yet glossy with starch, I taste for seasoning. The grains whisper earth and nut and faint wine sweetness. They want brightness. I add the preserved lemon dice, scattering them like confetti over a parade route. Immediately, the pan exhales a high citrus note that rises above the deeper orchestra of tomatoes and leek. A teaspoon of smoked paprika follows, drifting crimson over browns and greens. I stir, and sudden color blooms, sunset swirling with river mud. The aroma is campfire on an orange grove, smoke tangled with fruit. A final ladle of broth disappears, leaving the mixture loose but not soupy. Off heat, I fold in crumbled feta, watching edges soften yet hold shape. little islands of cream set, adrift in a savory sea. Parsley rains down last, bright dots of green that remember daylight. I spoon a portion into a wide ceramic bowl, the kind too heavy for everyday use, but perfect for a night worth remembering. Drizzle of honey across the top, barely a teaspoon, bridges paprika's smoke and lemon's tang with quiet sweetness. I carry the bowl to the small dining table by the window, where a single beeswax candle waits to be lit. Fork poised, I savor the tableau. Grain speckled with red and gold, tomatoes glistening like rubies half hidden in sand, feta melting into rivulets that catch candle fire. Outside, city lights wink on one by one, reflections quivering in river dark. I take the first bite. Texture leads. Chewy farro yielding to tooth, followed by velvet leek. Then flavor layers unfold. A burst of tomato sweetness, sudden zing of lemon rind, flinty smoke of paprika, and at the very end, honey's soft glow. The combination is unexpected yet inevitable, like two strangers meeting on a train and discovering they are distant cousins. I close my eyes, chew slowly, and feel warmth bloom behind my ribs. Halfway through the bowl, I pause, set fork down, and simply breathe. The kitchen still smells of simmer, a savory echo lingering in tile grout and curtain, fabric. Steam from the pot drifts ceilingward, sketches invisible constellations on plaster. I realize I have not thought once of messages or deadlines since chopping the first tomato. Time has reduced itself like the broth in my pan, concentrated, flavorful, enough. When the bowl is empty, I scrape the last streaks with an eager spoon, then stand to portion leftovers into glass containers. Tomorrow's lunch will carry this evening forward, a reminder tucked beneath a lid. I run warm water in the sink, slip hands into sudsy heat, and wash skillet, spoon, knife in unhurried sequence. Soap bubbles glare rainbow under overhead light. Even cleaning feels choreographed, a coda to the culinary song. Dishes drying, I return to the table with a square of dark chocolate and the final inches of wine. I jot notes in my journal about proportions and tweaks, maybe toasted pistachios. Next time, maybe a swirl of harissa for heat. And beside the recipe, I write a small reflection. Improvisation tastes of courage. The words look bolder than I feel, yet fitting. Tonight I trusted intuition over instruction and discovered a flavor map drawn by memory, whim, and the willingness to err. Before bed, I press the spent lemon rinds into a jar of sea salt to start a new citrus infusion. Seeds of tomorrow's experiments, already planted. The candle sputters, dies, leaving the faint perfume of beeswax to guard the dark. As I slide beneath cool sheets, palate still humming with smoke-bright tang, I sense the kitchen walls settling into satisfied silence. We have conspired well. Sleep comes easy, carrying images of red enamel pans, swirling broth, and spoonfuls of golden grain. Somewhere in the half-dream, I lift a toast to the ordinary room that, given light and daring, transformed into a laboratory of wonder, and to myself, apprentice alchemist, measuring nothing, discovering everything. Chapter 6. Dusk by the Lake. I step out of the building just as the sky tilts from late afternoon gold to the lavender wash that preludes sunset. City traffic has thinned to a low, continuous murmur, like someone drumming fingers on distant tin. I tighten the laces on my sneakers, inhale air that smells faintly of grilled peppers from a food cart closing up for the night, and point my feet toward Crescent Lake. A 20-minute walk if I follow the side streets and don't let curiosity detour me too far. The neighborhoods along the way are shifting moods. First comes Maple Row, where clapboard houses lean toward narrow gardens bursting with marigolds and mint. A calico cat surveys me from a porch rail, all green-eyed judgment until I greet her with a nod. Then she softens into a slow blink of tolerance. Farther on, the street widens into Birch Avenue, storefronts shuttered, neon signs half lit. A teenager practices skateboard ollies in an empty parking bay. The thunk of wheels meeting asphalt echoes between closed bakeries and quiet laundromats. He lands one clean, fists the air, notices me clapping and grins, a small handshake made of sound before he rolls away. With each block, the air cools. Evening unfurls a silver ribbon above rooftops, and swallows weave across it like dark stitches. When I catch the first glimpse of water, just a sliver between two office buildings, it glints pewter, mirroring a sun already dipping behind treetops. I quicken my pace. Crescent Lake greets me the way an old friend does, without preamble, inviting me to pick up the conversation wherever we left it. A gravel path circles the shoreline, framed by aspen whose round leaves flutter like coins in a breeze. I follow the crunch of gravel underfoot until I reach a weathered dock jutting 30 feet into the lake. Here the water lies almost still, only a faint riffle where a pair of grebes cut V-shaped wakes toward the reeds. I sit cross-legged at the end of the dock, arms wrapped around my knees, shoes dangling just above the mirrored surface. The horizon glows tangerine at its center, then melts through apricot to soft heliotrope, finally sliding into a blue so deep it feels almost interior. Each hue lasts moments. Each moment feels impossibly full. Dragonflies patrol low above the water, their wings catching last light like shards of stained glass. One hovers inches from my face, an iridescent green marvel, emerald body pivoting with gyroscopic grace before zipping off to hunt midges. In the reeds, a chorus of insects tunes up, the first tentative trills swelling into a many-voiced hum. The lake becomes a single breathing organ, exhaling mist, inhaling twilight. A rowboat punctuates the scene, oarlocks creaking rhythmically as an elderly man guides the craft toward open water. He rows in unhurried strokes, backlit so completely by the sinking sun that he appears carved from shadow. Each pull of his oars lifts droplets that flash copper, then fall as obsidian. I raise a hand in greeting. He pauses mid-stroke to return the gesture, a silhouette waving from inside a blaze of sunset. Further down the bank, a family, parents and two small girls, collects smooth stones and competes to skip them. Every splash sends expanding rings. Across the orange water, each ring a temporary portal that collapses back into calm. The girls count skips aloud, squeals rising higher each time a stone survives an extra hop. Their laughter arcs over the lake and reaches me as pure, untranslated joy. I retrieve the slim notebook I always carry now, its cover already flecked with coffee stains, charcoal smudges, a dot of paprika from last night's kitchen experiment. Sitting on the dock's timber boards, I jot impressions in quick strokes. Amber-winged dragonfly, rower etched in firelight. Laughter skips like stones. The act of writing feels less like documenting and more like tasting a flavor. Twice, once with senses, once with ink. Light continues to dim, yet colors grow paradoxically richer. Clouds above the western tree line ignite in fiery corals and magentas, then fade to rose, then to ash violet, finally surrendering to the deepening indigo of night. It strikes me how endings often blaze brighter than beginnings, how dusk is day's loudest whisper. I close the notebook and simply breathe. In 4 counts. Lake air tinged with damp wood and distant barbecue smoke. Out 6 counts. Letting my shoulders unclench another fraction. With vision softened, I notice subtle motions. A ripple where a fish nibbles a mosquito. The cautious way reeds sway when a breeze teases them. A lone maple leaf landing gently on water, spinning lazily in place. Behind me, lampposts flicker on along the trail, their halos small and golden against the encroaching dark. Fireflies answer with green pinpricks nearer the grass, tiny lanterns, rising and falling at random intervals. Somewhere across the lake, a saxophone begins to play. Notes drifting from a porch or a park bench. Slow blues phrases elongated to match the pace of dusk. The melody coils around the hush like smoke, neither intruding nor apologizing. Temperature dips further. I pull my jacket tighter and feel the satisfying rasp of zipper teeth meeting. At my feet, the lake now mirrors constellations beginning to pepper the sky. First Venus, then faintly the curve of the Big Dipper. Water and heavens exchange secrets in silent glints. I let thoughts wander. I recall the barista's calendula seeds, still warm in my pocket, destined for a flower pot, but already sowing color in my imagination. I remember the preserved lemon tang from dinner, the grit of farro between molars, the way courage tasted like smoked paprika. These memories swirl with evening air, settle into a quiet conviction. Life, when unhurried, arranges itself into harmonies I never hear while sprinting. A soft thunk breaks reverie. One of the skipping stones overshoots and lands near the dock, sending cool droplets onto my shoes. One of the girls runs over, cheeks flushed pink from exertion. "Sorry, mister," she calls. I smile and toss the stone back. It arcs high, catching the last fringe of light, and plops at her feet. She waves, dashes off, mission resumed. The rowboat drifts back toward shore. The saxophone transitions into a winding coda. Night's blue has now steeped into almost black. Crickets dominate the soundscape, punctuated only by the faint slap of water against the dock's supports. I rise, knees creaking softly, and ease myself upright. Before leaving, I crouch to trail fingertips across the lake's surface. Cool, silk sliding under skin, an unspoken promise to return. The path home is lit in pools of lamp gold. Gravel crunch turns to asphalt hush as I exit the park. Above the treetops, the moon, just past first quarter, hangs like a chipped lantern, bright enough to silver the clouds, but dim enough to let the stars keep their pride. I match my pace to the slow swing of my arms, notebook tucked under one elbow, pockets warmed by hands not long ago chilled by lake water. Back at my apartment door, I pause, glance up. Between satellite lines and airplane beacons, I spot a single shooting star, tearing a brief thread of white across the sky's dark fabric. Reflexively, I wish. Nothing elaborate, only that I may keep noticing moments like this. the kind that require little except presence. Inside, the hallway light clicks on with a soft hum. I set the notebook on the entryway table, already eager to reread its lake-soaked sentences in the morning. As I move toward bed, the faint phantom of lake wind clings to my clothes, and I let it, evidence of a dusk well spent. Sleep arrives on quiet oar strokes, carrying reflections of fire-lit clouds and the hush of dragonfly wings. Somewhere in the drift between waking and dreaming, water laps against wood, endlessly patient, gently reminding me that stillness is not the absence of motion, but the presence of depth. Chapter 7. Reflections in the Greenhouse. Morning unfolds like a soft-bound journal, the kind whose pages invite ink to linger, and I resolve to write today's entry in living color. A pale autumn sun glides through half-draped curtains. Its light is cool but resolute, nudging me toward the door with promises of quiet discovery. I slip binoculars and the ever-present notebook into my canvas satchel, grab a tin of calendula seeds from the hall table, and set out for the botanic conservatory that sits at the town's edge like a glass cathedral of green. The walk is brisk, air tinged with the crisp bite that signals winter's rehearsal. Maple leaves skitter along the pavement, chattering like excited children on the first day of school. As I near the conservatory's wrought iron gates, the world hushes. Traffic noise muffled by thick hedges, cityscapes surrendering to chlorophyll. A wrought sign overhead reads, "The Jubilee House of Living Light." Standing beneath it feels ceremonial, as though I'm about to step into a different calendar, one where time ticks by the unfurling of fronds rather than the buzz of deadlines. Inside, humidity kisses my cheeks in a dewy welcome. Condensation purls on the inner panes, refracting the sunshine into splinters of rainbow that drift lazily across gravel paths. Overhead, arched beams of iron and glass crisscross like the ribs of a colossal, benevolent whale, holding in an ocean of warm, perfumed air. Each breath tastes faintly of loam, orchid nectar, and something older, maybe ancient fern spores, maybe the memory of a primeval forest. I choose a circuitous route that threads first through the desert pavilion. Here, spiny sentinels stand at attention. Saguaro, organ pipe, a barrel cactus blooming a single improbable fuchsia flower. Their stoic forms remind me of cathedral pillars, silent witnesses to millennia of sunrise. Tiny signs display Latin names, Carnegie gigantea, Ferrocactus wieslizani, and I whisper them aloud, tasting their cadence like poems written by patient geologists. But my heart is set on the tropical glasshouse, so I cross the threshold into thicker air, beads of moisture dotting my glasses. The path corkscrews between towering banana leaves that flap overhead, casting mottled shadows. At my feet, moss cushions the edges of stepping stones, a living velvet that muffles each footfall. Somewhere high, invisible misters hiss intermittently, raining silver threads that catch the light and vanish before touching ground. Halfway in, I discover a wrought iron bench painted sage green, its seat warm from radiant heat pipes beneath. The floor. I sit, close my eyes, and let the greenhouse world replace inner chatter. Drips ping on broad leaves. A darting hummingbird scolds intruding footsteps. Unseen frogs trill low notes from a lily pond. The layered sounds resemble an orchestra tuning to a frequency older than concerts. Opening my eyes, I notice a cluster of orchids suspended from wooden slats overhead. White phalaenopsis with throats streaked magenta. Their roots dangle freely, silver green like seaweed, drinking moisture straight from the heavy air. One bloom leans toward me, luminous against the darker canopy. I find myself leaning back, mirroring an unspoken greeting. In glass reflections, I catch my own face rendered softly by mist, eyebrows lifted in quiet astonishment. The orchid seems to ask nothing but presence, and I grant it gladly. Farther along, a narrow footbridge crosses a koi pond so still it doubles the world. Canopy above, canopy below, an infinity stitched by floating leaves. Koi glide beneath like living brush strokes of copper and ivory, stirring dreamlike currents. Each ripple reaches the pond's edge, nudging lotus pods that tilt and release tiny drops back to the mirror. I linger mid-bridge, palms on the cool iron railing, and peer into the water until surface and depth trade places, sky becoming abyss, fish becoming constellations. Near the far exit stands my true destination, the Victorian Fernery. It's a smaller annex built from antique panes, now tinged sea glass green. Stepping through feels like opening a secret chapter. The air here is subtler, cool, earth-scented, with faint whispers of damp stone. Enormous tree ferns arch overhead, their fronds overlapping like the pages of a giant botanical encyclopedia written in chlorophyll. Light falls through them in patterned lace, shifting as the fronds sway. I tilt my head back. For a moment, the ceiling dissolves, replaced by living mandalas of green geometry. There's a wooden potting table off to one side, cluttered with clay, shards, pruning shears, and a faded paperback on bryophytes. A laminated card invites guests to plant a promise, leave a seed, Remembering the calendula tin in my satchel, I pry off its lid. Inside jingle a dozen crescent seeds the color of toasted oats. With a childlike hush, I fill a small terracotta pot halfway with friable compost from a burlap sack. Press 3 seeds into the dark, cover them lightly, and mist the surface with water from a pewter sprayer. I tuck a pencil label beside them. Bright calendula, planted in a moment of stillness. My handwriting wobbles, but the intent feels steady. A volunteer horticulturist approaches, secateurs dangling from her belt like silver feathers. Gray curls frame a face lined by sun and smile. She points to the pot, nods approval, and tells me calendula's petals are edible, that monk pharmacists once steeped them in balms for bruises. They heal by reminding skin how to remember sunlight, she says, offering a wink that folds centuries into a heartbeat. I thank her, pocket the empty tin, and move on. Before leaving the fernery, I find another iron bench, this one half hidden by a curtain of maidenhair fronds so fine they quiver at mere proximity. I sit, pull out my notebook, and let the pen idle, while I absorb the filtered green-gold light. Thoughts unfurl slow as fiddleheads, about growth hidden in darkness, about how fragility and resilience twine like stems around a trellis. I write, in glass silence, plants teach the vocabulary of patience. Roots before blooms, shade before fruit, breath before word. The sentence feels alive, sap still running through its syllables. I set the notebook down and watch condensation, bead on its cover, then roll off like small silver marbles. Even ink must learn to sway with humidity here. Eventually, a chime signals closing hour. Visitors file toward the exit, shoes scuffing gravel. But I lag at the doorway, reluctant to shed this humid cocoon. I trace a fingertip along the condensation of a pane, leaving a translucent path that vanishes almost immediately. Proof that even marks of presence can be absorbed and recycled in this sanctuary. Stepping outside feels like emerging from underwater. Sound returns sharper, air lighter, sky broader. Yet a thread of greenhouse warmth stays tucked beneath my collar, as if a pocket of tropical air sneaked out with me. On the walk home, I picture the future calendula, tiny suns flickering in soil, quiet testament that something began on this ordinary, extraordinary morning. Back at my apartment, I set the notebook on the desk. Its damp cover now cool and mottled like river stone. I place the empty seed tin beside it, a small metal echo of promise fulfilled. As twilight drapes the room, I light a single candle whose flame flickers leaf shadows across the wall. The day distills into stillness, fragrant with memory. Orchid breath, fern hush, calendar pages rustling into a slower season. Hours later, when sleep finally petals open, I dream I am walking the greenhouse paths again. But this time, every pane is a mirror, and everywhere I look, I see an endless canopy, above, below, within. I wake before dawn, heart lumen bright, confident that reflection, like photosynthesis, turns light into living substance if given patience and a place to grow. Chapter 8. Afternoon at the Gallery. The clock strikes 1 as I push open the heavy oak doors of the Municipal Art Gallery, exchanging a street of midday bustle for a hush so deep my footsteps suddenly feel ceremonial. Warm air perfumed with varnish and faint citrus cleaner embraces me. The foyer is a high, barrel-vaulted space of dove-gray stone. Sunlight spills through tall arched windows, bleaching the terrazzo floor to a soft glow and turning dust motes into mild constellations. I pause beneath a skylight where a Calder mobile dances in slow suspension, red crescents and black fins, riding invisible tides. They glide above me like abstract seabirds, weightless yet forever tethered to balance. A museum guard in navy blazer nods a silent greeting. I offer my ticket, then wander forward, already noticing how my pulse sinks with this quieter tempo. The first gallery is devoted to landscapes. I drift toward a luminous Turner, storms of ochre and indigo colliding over a molten sea. From 3 paces back, the scene vibrates with tempest. Step closer and the brushstrokes dissolve to raw gestures of amber, slate, flame. I realize my breath has slowed, as if the painting's horizon has lengthened my own. A plaque describes Turner's obsession with capturing light as atmosphere, not merely illumination. I think of yesterday's greenhouse, of photosynthetic light turned into substance, and nod at the thought that artists and leaves might be distant cousins. A few rooms on, the hall narrows into the Impressionist wing, its walls painted a subdued sage that seems to make every hue hum louder. I join a loose knot of visitors in front of a Degas study of ballet dancers stretching backstage. The pastel strokes are quick, alive, leggings smudged lavender, fingers suggested by single lines. One dancer's face is unfinished, only a hint of cheekbone and the curve of an ear exist, yet her fatigue is palpable. I imagine her exhale, that private elastic moment before performance. My shoulders soften in empathy. A docent guides a small school group nearby. She explains pointillism, waving a laser pointer over a surat, dots coalescing at distance, fracturing up close. The children lean in until chaperones remind them not to breathe on the canvas. Their curiosity feels contagious. I, too, step closer and watch turquoise bleed into mauve, then retreat until a Parisian riverbank re-emerges from the pixelated whirl. It strikes me how perception is an adjustable lens. Step back, a story. Step closer, raw color, hunger whispers. So I follow signs to the mezzanine café, ordering a chilled lavender lemonade and a rosemary shortbread. The café overlooks the atrium. From a balcony stool, I observe visitors flowing along marble corridors like quiet tide pools. I sip. The drink tastes of citrus twilight and garden calm, its lavender note recalling the syrup in my free filter coffee during yesterday's rainbow discount. Each day's palette is beginning to echo, I note. Lavender, rosemary, calendula, orchid. Just refreshed, I descend to the temporary exhibition, Shadows and Echoes, Contemporary Sculpture and Dialogue. The entrance arch frames a vast white cube dotted with shapes that defy the predictable. My shoes squeak softly on polished concrete. Each squeak ricochets off bare walls, returned as faint applause. Immediately, a 12-foot tower of interlocked bronze hands commands attention in the center. Fingers reach, clasp, twist, some in embraces, others in near clenches. The plaque reveals the piece is titled Collective Memory, each cast molded from a resident of the city. I circle it, noticing how the quickly changing angles make shadows ripple across the floor, as though the hands are still flexing. On the far wall hangs a mixed media work. Hundreds of translucent acrylic squares suspended on fine filament, each square painted with a single brushstroke. Stand at the right vantage, and the strokes converge into the faint outline of a face. Move one step to either side, and the image dissolves. I test it. Face appears, disappears, reappears, like a secret only revealed to the patient. A young woman beside me laughs softly when we both find the angle at once. Our eyes meet in a brief, wordless pact of shared discovery. In an alcove, I find something subtler. A glass vitrine holding dozens of river pebbles, each etched with a single word. Listen, carry, lose, kindle, return. A spotlight above creates bright ellipses on their wet sheen surfaces. Visitors are encouraged to lift a pebble, weigh it, then return it, adding their fingerprints to the patina. I pick Kindle. It's smoother than expected, warm from the last hand. The idea of holding one word, literally, feels anchoring. I roll it in my palm, imagine sparks, then place it back, hesitant to keep flame from someone else. At the gallery's rear, I stumble upon the artist-in-residence studio, a glass-walled space where a sculptor currently works on site. Inside, clay torsos in varying stages of emergence line shelves like sentries caught between worlds. The sculptor, salt and pepper hair pulled into a knot, apron-streaked terracotta, shapes a new figure's collarbone with wooden tool and thumb. While I watch, he steps back, narrows his gaze, then advances again for a micro-adjustment. The rhythm is familiar. Pour, stir, taste, breathe. Except here it is. Pinch, smooth, pause, assess. Creation's meter is universal. He glances up and offers a nod toward a stack of sketchbooks on a side bench, inviting visitors to flip through. I do, gently. Charcoal gesturals of dancers, fishermen, even streets I recognize sketched at dawn. On the last page, an unfinished scribble of the bronze hand tower stands next to a note. A society's fingerprint is the shape of its helping. I whisper the line aloud, letting it absorb into the air between glass and clay. Time dissolves. Inside these rooms, when I emerge into the foyer again, the light slanting through windows has ripened to late afternoon amber. I'm surprised to find 3 hours have folded with barely a crease. My notebook itches for ink, so I sink onto a wooden bench beneath the Calder Mobile and write, "Art is a mirror that lets us step inside the glass, reflecting what we bring, revealing what we missed." Around me, the mobile shifts, casting curved shadows across the page like slow commas. Before leaving, I stop in the gift shop. Shelves brim with postcard reproductions, enamel pins shaped like palette knives, notebooks stitched in Mondrian colors. I choose a single postcard, the Turner, deciding I will mail it to the barista at Lumen Roastery with a note thanking her for yesterday's seeds, a full circle of creativity returning to its source. Outside, the city greets me with a cooling breeze and the ripe scent of street market peaches. My mind still hums with optical echoes, hands twining, acrylic squares aligning, dots merging into Riverside scenes. Pedestrian chatter subsides into background texture as I walk, each storefront reflection temporarily layering art over reality. My figure silhouetted against mannequins, passing buses blurring into streaks like unintended brushstrokes. Halfway, home. I pause by a brick wall splashed with a new mural I'd never noticed. A spray-painted koi leaping over pixelated waves, its scales stenciled in neon gradients that shift under shifting sun. Gallery walls may close at dusk, I realize, but the city keeps curating around the clock. I snap a mental Polaroid, savor the ephemeral exhibit. Back at my apartment desk, I prop the Turner postcard under a lamp so the painted waterline glows. I draft the note to the barista. Saw a storm at sea this afternoon. Carried home full sails of gratitude. Seeds sprouting. Jordan. Pen down, I lean back. Evening lamplight mingles with memories. A dancer stretching, a face in suspended squares. A word pebble warming in my palm. Each image feels like pigment settling into fresh canvas, ready to be worked into the larger piece of these days. I fill the kettle for mint tea, reflecting on how galleries do not merely house art. They loan us new vocabularies for seeing. Tomorrow, perhaps I'll repaint a slice of my own life with those borrowed hues, slow brush strokes across ordinary hours, pointillist dots of attention in overlooked corners. For now, I sink into the quiet, letting afternoon linger like sap. You can still feel the tree it came from, still smell a hint of forest resin whenever you breathe. Steam curls from the mug, fogging the Turner briefly. When it clears, sea and sky swirl as before, yet somehow more alive, because inside this room, inside this heart, they have been witnessed. Chapter 9. The Baker's Street. The next morning, I wake to the scent of possibility, warm, faintly yeasty, as if dawn itself has been proofing dough somewhere beyond the skyline. A dream lingers at the edge of memory, rows of golden loaves, cooling on windowsills, their crusts crackling like gentle applause. It feels like an invitation, and I decide to follow it. By 8:30, I'm out the door, notebook tucked beneath one arm, senses tuned the way a forager tunes to mushrooms after rain. A pale sun hangs low, diffusing through thin clouds so that every brick and bicycle glows softly, like a watercolor still drying. My route meanders south toward a district locals call Baker's Street, a cobblestone lane rumored to hold more ovens than apartment mailboxes. The air shifts as I draw near. First, a shy hint of cinnamon slides between alley walls, soon joined by darker notes of cocoa and toasted hazelnut. Rounding a corner, I'm greeted by the full orchestra, butter singing on hot trays, sugar caramelizing, yeast exhaling its slow rise sigh. The street itself is modest, no wider than 2 passing vans, but its storefronts feel cathedral tall when their broad windows glow over sidewalk displays. I pause beneath a wrought iron arch where painted letters read Rue des Boulangers in aging teal. Beneath the sign, an elderly woman in a burgundy coat balances a baguette like a scepter. She tips her felt hat to me, crumbs tumbling from the tip, and disappears into the morning crowd. The first shop is La Petite Mie, a patisserie, the color of fresh cream with rose gold hardware on the door. The window boasts pyramids of almond-dusty croissants and eclairs clad in glossy fondant. A teenage apprentice pipes coffee custard into shoe shells, concentration furrowing her brow like a miniature plowed field. I step inside, greeted by a bell that rings an F-sharp, bright, insistent. Heat from the deck ovens wraps around me, fragrant and almost maternal. The baker behind the counter offers a palm-sized kouign-amann, its caramel glaze catching light like amber. I decline. Today I'm grazing, not settling, but thank her and pocket the visual memory. Outside again the street narrows. Sunlight ricochets off multi-paned windows and lands on a slate sign chalked with looping script. Gustavo's Granary, where old wheat finds new life. I duck in. Here the palate warms from pastel to sepia. Sacks of heritage spelt and red fife. Line rough-hewn shelves and the air is perfumed with malt. Gustavo himself, a bearded giant in a linen apron, scoops a handful of ruby rye grains, letting them trickle through his fingers while extolling their earthier chew, nuttier soul. He offers a slice of still-hot misha, crust blistered, crumb marbled with steam. I tear off a fragment. It crackles, then melts into tangy depth on the tongue, wheat singing its own history. I buy a quarter loaf wrapped in striped paper and tuck it into my satchel, determined not to eat it before noon. Further along, laughter spills from Dolce and Figli, an Italian forno where opera arias loop quietly under rafters scenting of olive oil and rosemary. Inside, Nonna-size pans hold focaccia dimpled with halved cherry tomatoes glistening like rubies set in bread. A young man, Marco, according to his name tag, explains that the dough rose overnight, the way stars rise, slowly but with purpose. He cuts me a corner piece. Oil pools in its craters, rosemary needles crisp at the edges. The bite is sunlit countryside transposed into carbohydrate. I close my eyes, chew slowly, taste hillside wind. Back outside, a delivery tricycle rattles by, crates stacked high with crusty batards still venting curls of steam. The courier rings a brass handbell to clear pedestrians. Its note mingles with distant church chimes composing a kind of accidental fugue. I imagine every loaf has its destination. A cafe, a family table, perhaps the picnic of two strangers who will break bread and decide to travel together. Halfway down the block, I see a queue spilling from a shop whose facade is chalk black and trimmed in copper, Lebanon lanterns. The line smells of cardamom and conversation. A bearded poet recites verses about brioche to his companion, gesturing with a baguette as though conducting a symphony. I join the queue, curiosity outweighing impatience. Inside, Edison bulbs dangle in glass jars. Their filaments glow like captive fireflies. Rows of hanging lanterns reflect on steel racks heaped with sourdough boules, each scored pattern a unique glyph. The baker, a woman with flour dust lashes, wields a lame as if calligraphing in crust. I order a small moon-shaped loaf dubbed night crust. She explains it's fermented under cool temperatures for 2 sleeps, giving it a deep umami and surprisingly light crumb. While she wraps it, I notice a side shelf dedicated to experimental loaves, charcoal sesame swirl, yuzu-infused ciabatta, even a cocoa raspberry levain. The scent kaleidoscopes from tang to sweet, to citrus, to smoke. I promise myself to return, with an emptier stomach and a fuller coin purse. Leaving the lantern-lit warmth, I step into a pocket of sunlight where a street musician plays accordion. His tune is lilting, minor key, making the bakery smells feel like nostalgia you can inhale. I drop a coin. He nods mid-cadence, the music looping seamlessly on. Melody follows as I cross to Madame Burr's viennoiserie cart, a vintage bicycle, hauling a copper warmer filled with canelles and palmier fans. She hands out samples with the practiced grace of someone who knows each bite will convert skepticism into loyalty. I accept a mini palmier. Layers shatter, then dissolve with butter toffee. Sweetness. Sugar granules sparkle on my fingers. I lick them and taste seaside salt from fleur de sel folded into the dough. At the cul-de-sac end of Baker Street stands Saint-Honoré Communal Oven, a cooperative space where neighborhood residents bring home-proofed doughs to bake in a wood-fired hearth. The building is brick, soot-kissed, and forever emanating a comforting ember glow. Inside, a bulletin board bristles with recipes typed on typewriters, annotated in pencil. Increase hydration to 78%. Add walnuts during final fold. I watch a grandmother slide a braided challah onto the stone, whispering something, perhaps a wish for her grandchildren, to the loaf before sealing the iron door. A volunteer offers a tour of the oven's belly, fire brick walls, ceiling arch blackened by decades of flame, floor scattered with cornmeal like stardust. The scent is primal, wood smoke layered over centuries of risen hope. I imagine earlier townsfolk arriving by moonlight, carrying dough like secret prayers to be kissed by heat. Bread. The oldest contract between hunger and patience. Tour finished. I step outside to a small courtyard where benches form a loose circle around a herb planter. I sit, unwrap Gustavo's Misha slice, and break off a piece of night crust moon. Loaf. The two breads meet midair in my hands, One hearty rye sour, the other smoky delicate, like old friends trading stories. I chew alternately, letting flavors negotiate on my palate. Tang answering umami, smoke diffusing into nut, crust giving way to soft interior shot through with irregular holes. Notebook open on my knee, I jot impressions rapid fire. Steam, rising like whispered agreements. Flower remembers the field. Yeast remembers the wind. Baker Street, geography of patience measured in grams. A sparrow lands near my shoe, eyeing crumbs. I flick a fragment of crust. It hops, snatches, darts off. Tiny courier delivering my gratitude to the sky. Shadows lengthen. Shop fronts close shutters with a clatter like applause at curtain call. The accordion player packs up. The yeast perfumes thin as ovens cool. I linger until the last bakery sweeps flour from its doorstep, white spirals catching twilight and drifting away. Walking home, satchel heavier with loaves, I notice the city smells different now. Diesel softened by residual butter, asphalt by phantom caramel. Even the evening air seems leavened, lighter somehow. In my kitchen, I slice the night crust, letting crumbs tumble onto the cutting board like constellations uncharted. I toast 2 slices and drizzle them with leftover fig compote from Chapter 4, the fruit's sweetness fusing with sour smoke crumb. With first bite, the entire day, apprentice piping custard, Gustavo's rye lecture, accordion echoes, returns like heat from a reopened oven. I pour a glass of cool water, raise it in quiet toast. To the alchemists of Baker Street, who turn patient mornings into edible time capsules. The water tastes faintly sweet after the bread. I suspect even H2O learns generosity when stored near warm loaves. Before bed, I place Gustavo's remaining micha slice in a cloth bag with an apple wedge to maintain softness. Into my journal goes one last line, scrawled beneath butter-stained corners. In every crust, a map of heat. In every crumb, the still beating heart of grain. I close the book, extinguish the lamp, and drift into sleep scented with rye, rosemary, and the promise that tomorrow's dawn will again smell faintly of freshly proofed possibility. Chapter 10. Promises Under the Stars. Night settles over the city like a velvet throw, dulling the roar of evening traffic to a far-off purr. After tidying the kitchen, crumbs brushed from the cutting board, the last teacup rinsed and inverted. On the rack, I flick off the overhead light and let darkness guide me to the balcony door. A faint breeze sneaks through the gap, carrying undertones of wood smoke, river mist, and the ghost of today's bakeries. The city's lullaby. I step outside barefoot, a quilt folded under one arm, notebook and pen tucked into its corner like a bookmark in fabric. The balcony is small, 2 paces wide, 3 long, yet tonight it feels limitless, suspended between skyline and sky. Above me, constellations scatter in indifferent brilliance. The Milky Way, a pale river drawn across infinity. Venus hangs low near the western rooftops, bright enough to cast a pinpoint reflection on the glass rim of the lantern I keep out here. For cool evenings, I strike a match. The wick flares, then steadies into amber. Shadows spill outward, softening the concrete parapet, lending the air a hush reminiscent of chapels and tide pools. I spread the quilt on the wooden chaise, its fabric, still faintly scented with last summer's lavender sachet, settling onto it. I draw my knees close and exhale until my breath fogs the rim of starlight overhead. The city below murmurs, a train horn in the distance, a door slam, someone's laughter ricocheting off brick, yet each sound arrives softened, as though traveling through a sieve of moonlight. From the satchel at my feet, I retrieve items collected over these wandering days. The cobalt medicine bottle rescued from river reeds, a single calendula petal that hitchhiked on my cuff, a matchbox label from Lumen Roastery stamped with tiny constellations, a crumb of night crust sourdough wrapped in wax paper. I arrange them on the quilt like relics on museum velvet and let memory spool. The hush of the greenhouse where ferns laced sunlight into cathedral windows. The kinetic hush of gallery rooms where bronze hands reached for one another across decades. The kinetic hush of Baker's Street ovens, their steady respiration proofing hope before dawn. So many variations on quiet, I think, each one tuned to a different frequency of wonder. I open the notebook, pages creased, some butter smudged, edges scented with mint, lemon, and graphite, and riffle back to earlier entries. Wandering led me back to wonder. Improvisation tastes of courage, steam rising like whispered agreements. These fragments glow now like embers, each capable of reigniting its moment with a single reread. Tonight, I want to braid them into a promise sturdy enough to survive the eventual return of alarm clocks and inboxes. I uncap my pen. The click is loud against the hush. A tiny gavel calling the mind to order. Promise number 1. I will practice deliberate slowness. Morning coffee sipped, not gulped. Riverside breaths counted, not skipped. I will treat minutes as ingredients, not obstacles. Promise number 2. I will notice the overlooked, the swirl in latte foam, the micro crackle of bread crust cooling, the shy, orchid root suspended midair. Noticing is a form of praise. Promise Number 3. I will create without rehearsal. A dish invented from refrigerator happenstance. A sketch scribbled on Café receipt. A sentence dared before being perfected. I will trust rough drafts of living. Promise Number 4. I will exchange gratitude like currency. A coin to a street musician, a postcard to a barista, a pebble returned to the sculpture's cradle. Gratitude multiplies when spent. Promise Number 5. I will leave places kinder than I found them. Riverbanks cleaner, potting tables seated, conversations gentler. Restoration is a quiet art. Pen lifted, I breathe. Ink glistens before drying, tiny galaxies pooling in the loops of letters. Overhead, real galaxies continue their silent revolutions, oblivious yet somehow approving. I snap shut the notebook, slip it beneath the quilt's edge, and lean back until my head rests on cool wood. Eyes adjust, stars sharpen. I pick out Orion's belt, scooping imaginary grains of meteor dust into my palm. Somewhere behind me, the building's old radiator clangs. One last protest before settling into sleep. But out here, the night remains unruffled. Moonlight slides along the cobalt bottle, setting its blue core ablaze. On impulse, I unstopper it and speak softly into the glass, as if addressing a message to tides. Carry these promises forward. I reseal the bottle and place it on the windowsill, where dawn's first light will ignite it like a lighthouse for tomorrow's self. The lantern sputters, demanding attention. I feed it a fresh inch of wick, watch flames steady, then pull the quilt over my legs. A hush unique to 2 a.m. descends, the hour when most of the city sleeps and even ambitions dream slower dreams. In that stillness, breathing becomes conversation. Inhale star-scattered cool, exhale bakery-warm memory. The exchange feels almost alchemical, like trading ordinary carbon dioxide for specks of cosmic shimmer. At last, fatigue drapes over me, soft as pastry dough. I gather the relics into their satchel, snap shut the pen, douse the lantern. In the sudden near dark, stars bloom brighter, as if grateful for the reclaimed stage. Hand on the balcony door, I pause and whisper the final promise, unscripted, spoken only to the night. Come morning, may I remember the texture of now. Inside, the apartment greets me with companionable shadows and the faint perfume of rosemary lingering from yesterday's bread. I slide under cool sheets, the notebook and cobalt bottle resting on the bedside table like guardians. Outside the lobby. Open window, wind flutes through drying laundry, and a lone nightbird trills, an epilogue in feathered Morse code. Eyes closed, I replay the day, canvas shadows, rosemary salt, accordion arias, each image folding into the next until they quilt. My dreams. Sleep approaches on silent oar strokes, carrying the reflection of stars across calm water, ferrying today's promises toward tomorrow's shore. Somewhere between waking and dreaming, I feel the earth roll beneath constellations and realize the simplest promise might be enough. To stay awake to wonder, even when eyelids fall. And under that expansive sky, studded with light older than humankind, the promise feels as enduring as any star. Great work today! Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Easy English Spark channel for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.